Hi everyone, this is Robert Craven with Launch Natural. I'm happy to be here today with a good friend Jeff Hilton from IMG, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about some of the major marketing trends that are going on in the industry and just in general. There's so much going on right now from a technology standpoint and a marketing standpoint. I've been anxious to talk to Jeff about what he's seeing from his standpoint. And we'll start off today by getting a little background on Jeff. I think it's important for you guys to know who you're talking to. So how you doing today, Jeff?
I'm great, Robert. Good to talk to you.
Good to talk to you too. Why don't you start by giving us a little bit of your background and industry experience, and tell us a little bit about what you're up to, and then we'll jump into our discussion today.
Let's see. Well, I've been in marketing for about 30 years now, coming up on my 30th year. My experience in the industry is about a little over half that. Started out my career with Nature's Way as VP marketing there. Then moved up to Nutraceutical Corp, president of one of their divisions, the Cal division, and then started my own company and consulting company, and it grew into Integrated Marketing Group, and we've been in business about 12 years. So,
excellent.
Yeah, it's been terrific.
You've seen a lot in this industry.
Oh man, I think I've seen it. Yeah, there are others who've seen more than I have, but I've seen quite a bit. I remember back in the early days of the industry, when I lived in Los Angeles and worked in the agency business before I even got involved in this industry. We did some work for Nature Aid at an ad agency I worked at, and this is back in the 80s. And I remember going to the Anaheim show when it was in a little hall that was just like a large rec center hall. That's how big the show hall was. I remember the expo when it was just a little tiny show, so there you go.
Yeah, I got in the industry in 2003, and we showed up with a 50 by 50. So it was like, I think that was one of the high years where things were really kind of starting to take off. Well, I want to talk to you about the industry, but also just marketing in general. I mean, we're going through some major changes, and as you know, most of the people that I communicate with or coach tend to be small to medium-sized companies. And there's different life cycles that you and I have talked about before, where you've got maybe a startup, and then you've got maybe 1 to 5 million or 1 to 10 million in sales. Then you go like 10 to 20, 30, 40 million, and then over 40, 50 million. You know, some of the big guys in our industry would be considered, the big guys would be over 50, over 60 million. So, we talked a little bit about life stages, and in general, for all those companies in those life stages, what do you think are some of the major trends that are impacting marketing efforts today that all of them need to be aware of?
Well, I think that the landscape for consumer communication is just it's topsy-turvy right now. It's not settled at all. It's constantly changing. I mean, the big trends we see is, of course, a movement to online from traditional media. I mean, one of the trends we saw the last 5 or 6 years was a movement from paid media into public relations. That was the first trend I think we saw, with people looking for more credible outlets for a product message, that third-party credibility that the media can give. So the growth in PR is something we've seen last 5, 6 years, but what we're seeing now in the last few years, and I think we're going to be seeing a lot of in the next couple of years, is this migration over to online vehicles and social media and what I'll call the new media. And so it's really it's pretty phenomenal what's happening. I mean, you look at broadcast television and what's happening with the networks and even cable, and the proliferation of outlets people have for news and information is just phenomenal. Yeah. And so I think everything's kind of in a little bit of an upheaval. And I think what you're also finding is some interesting segmentation between what young people, how they're consuming media, and how a more traditional boomer consumes media. They're very different habits. And so as boomers age and 20-somethings become 30-somethings, it's going to be a wild ride.
Yeah, it blows me away. I mean, it's not just the media shifts in the media and how it's all happening, but just the shifts in technology is really what's underlying all of this. The traditional newspaper publications going away, and how that's all impacting. You mentioned the difference between kind of the boomers and how they consume media versus the younger Twitter crowd, if you will. Can you speak a little bit more to that? If I've got a product in the natural industry and I'm targeting that younger demographic, or on the flip side, I've got a product and I'm targeting maybe the older demographic, what are some of the differences I might think about in terms of how I might position my marketing?
Well, I mean, a lot of clients fall into the trap of thinking that just because they've got, just because media is changing, that young people are not looking at any of the traditional media. And I don't think that's necessarily true. I think it's an issue of moderation. What I think is that the balance of of the two is shifting over time. And I think a smart marketer looks at their audience and realizes that there's a diversity within that audience, if it's defined by age, demographics, psychographics, whatever it is. But I think the more important definition is the psychographics, how they're buying, who they are, what their mindset is, what their attitude is. Because, I mean, the 20-somethings are still consuming media. They're just consuming media that has to do with their areas of interest, not necessarily the general media, which is more what the boomers, myself, you, might be reading on a more regular basis. You know, one of the interesting trends we've noticed is with Twitter. You know, it's interesting, and we talked about this recently in the MBJ Summit, was that only 5% of Twitter users are teenagers or 20-somethings. 5%. I think it blew everybody away. And I saw an article the other day that talked about all the misconceptions about social media. So you do see some of the older consumers embracing Twitter. They're the main users. Fastest growing group on Facebook is women 50 plus. Wow. So figure that out. So I think we tend to want to put these things into compartments. What makes it a challenge is that they don't fall neatly into those compartments. Mm-hmm. You've got consumers in any target group you are interested in consuming media along a pretty full spectrum. So to me, the point is to have a convergence plan, convergence marketing, managing your online and your offline effectively. It's not that you're doing one in place of the other, you're just balancing those two, and that's the key.
You mentioned convergence. What do you mean by that? I mean, that's a new term for me, the convergence plan or convergence marketing. Explain a little bit more for the audience.
It's a trend that's picking up a lot of steam that I've heard a lot about recently. I mean, I read a lot, obviously, and it's balancing both from a messaging standpoint, from a media weight standpoint, your online and your offline brand messages. The point being that you've got consumer groups that are consuming both, some consumers who are consuming one or the other, online or offline. And I think where a lot of clients get confused is it's easy to have your online voice and your offline voice be different in terms of selling message, content, focus. And I think that, you know, convergence marketing really tries to bring together that messaging so that you're taking advantage of both media. I mean, the internet is interactive. So you're giving your same messaging, but you're making it more interactive for an internet-based audience. So it's that sort of thing that I think defines convergence for us.